when I was coming, or just before, I was thinking about one of the little talks that I gave at the Youth Sahabas. I said how Baba made, myself, for example, so welcoming. In other words, the first thing he said there was Francis Brabazon, whom you all would know, and another young chap, John Valentine, and myself. The three of us were from Australia, and we came in to the museum room of Meherabad. But in the play it was called the West Room. And as soon as we came in and Baba gestured for us to sit, he said to Francis, "You have brought me 2 jewels." And what I said was that it was not in any sense, it was simply a word that donated acceptance, irrespective of what I was then or now. In other words, the beauty of Baba was that he accepted one as one is, or as I was, for example, at that time. And I can't remember now how I was talking about with the young ones, the youth, but there were a number of stories that occurred to me, and then I thought why it brought to mind was I remembered an excellent one with Erich. There was a man that came to see Baba some point, I don't know when, and apparently he was an absolute thorough scoundrel. Everyone knew he was a scoundrel, and he came, and Baba greeted him so lovingly, and you'd think that he was, an absolutely sterling character. And Baba embraced him and sat him down and was so loving in every respect. And then he departed, and Erich said to Baba, you do know that he's known as one of the greatest scoundrels of Pune that you could ever find. And Baba said, hold up your hand and against the light. And there on the wall was the shadow. And Baba said, you see the shadow, I see the reality. Yeah. Was that right, Dana?
Yes.
Because the thing is, that story just came to me.
I remember Baba said about that man, I see all as many lifetimes, and he's a really good person.
Well, then that's additional. I didn't remember. All I remembered was that him saying that you see the shadow, but I see the reality. Yeah. But another one of the stories that I did tell the young ones, which also just came to me at the time, thinking about Baba's acceptance of me. When I look back, when I think not only what I am now, but what I was even then, some of the rough spots I think have been rubbed off a bit, but I was pretty raw, to be frank. And there's a story of Jesus in the Muslim tradition. It is said that in a certain town, there on the roadside leading into the town, or in the town itself, on the roadside was a dog that had been killed, and it had rotted, and it was absolutely one rotten mess, just a lump of rotten meat in every respect, and stinking, of course. And everyone that, as people went by, they held their noses, they turned aside, they did everything to avoid contact or even looking at it. Jesus came by, stopped and looked at it, and after a few moments said, "How white are his teeth?" Yeah. In other words, it's a lovely story to illustrate again that God-man sees the reality, or sees that point, it was symbolically the reality. And then I remembered another story of where, and you probably remember this one, where Norina had a friend who was alcoholic, and she thought, oh, if I could get her to Barbara, then Barbara would fix this alcoholism. And yes, that would be so good. So she sort of worked on her, and eventually did get her to Barbara. And she was introduced to Barbara, and she sat down, and Barbara said, I don't know how it came up, but in the course of, what do you do? How do you live? She said how she enjoyed wine, and Barbara said, "Oh, so do I," And the two of them, Norina couldn't believe her eyes. The two of them were like two wine drinkers, thoroughly enjoying each other's company. But Barbara, the difference was Barbara was saying, "Yes, well, of course, my wine, I don't have a hangover." Oh, isn't that marvellous? And Norina's getting more and more agitated, because when is Barbara going to say, now, of course, don't have any more wine? Nothing was said. Nothing. Barbara embraced her lovingly, and she departed. And Norina was so disappointed. She thought, oh, well, that fixes it. And she then, a bit of the lapse of time, apparently, sort of like a month later, she had the opportunity of seeing her again, and she went into the apartment of the friend, and the friend said, you can't believe it. I came back from seeing your master, Meherabad. I came back and I thought, oh, I'll have a glass of wine. And I realized I didn't want it. And she said, I have no desire whatsoever. I haven't had one since then, and I have absolutely no desire to have one. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? Yeah. And then I was saying about, how Barbara lives. He does it. Whatever he wants us to do, as it were, and be, he lives that. I was only thinking about silence, because I'm thinking about having to talk again next year. The night before Silence Day, I've got to think of another. And I was thinking how Barbara was silent in order to bring about some degree of silence in our own life, because God, it's chaotic, and the mind, I was only thinking how difficult it was to even keep silent for 24 hours. And I happened to mention to another Barbara lover, we were just talking about it the other day, and she was saying, yes, she said, the hours seem to drag. Isn't that incredible? Barbara kept silent for, 44 years, through car accidents, through illness, through fasting, all the conditions, and that incredible last period of his life where, his body was just tossed around. God only knows what the cause of it was, but through it all, he maintained the silence. Anyway, that's a diversion. No, the other story that I told was the one of Muhammad, the prophet. One of Erich's favourite stories. You may have heard it. You may have heard them all, but anyway, I was just thinking. I was thinking of the fact that if somebody said, "No, we've heard that," I say, "Well, don't tell me to stop because you're going to hear it again."
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Muhammad was sitting there with his close ones around him, and all of a sudden a woman comes with her young son, 7 or 8 or 9 years of age, and Muhammad greets her and says, "What is it? Why have you come?" She said, "Oh Lord, my son here is addicted to eating green dates. He can't. He has so many, and I know it'll ruin his stomach. Please tell him to stop eating green dates, or at least tell him to to stop having so many." Muhammad said, "Come back in a month's time." So, yeah, she greeted Muhammad and departed. And in due course, she travelled again from the distance where she was across the desert. She came after a month, and Muhammad appeared as though he knew nothing and said, "Why have you come?" And she repeated the same story, same thing with regard to her son. Muhammad said, Then he turned to the boy. He said, "It's not good to have so many green dates. 2 or 3 a day is all right, but no more. It'll affect your stomach. It'll affect your health." And the boy said, "Yes, I will, O Lord." He took it seriously, and the mother was very happy, and the two of them departed. And the Mundley, or the close ones, I don't know what they were called in those days, but the close ones with Muhammad were intrigued. Well, why the delay of the month? And finally, one of them had the courage to speak up. "Oh Lord, why did you ask the mother to come back in a month's time?" And Muhammad said, "My desire for green dates was even worse than the boys. So I knocked off completely. I had no green dates for a month in order to create a power behind my words." That's the point of it. The force behind the words. Isn't that beautiful? That's the key to it. In other words, it's no good, for any of us to sort of say to somebody, "Well, you shouldn't be doing this or shouldn't be doing that," unless we are living it ourselves, so that there is some force behind our words. And even then, we're I don't know about you, but I'm in the process, so again, I'm very hesitant. Yeah. Yes. I can just go on telling stories, but is there any question? Does anyone want to ask and give me a particular direction where I should talk?
Well, Bill, I'll ask, tell us a little bit about the books. Besides the Turning the Key in Australia, you have another series of books that are people's stories about being with Baba that you've...
Yeah, most of my books are stories. There's a series of 3 called The Divine Humanity of Meherabad, and they're mostly, almost completely, stories of those close to Baba, like Meherwan Jessawala, but also, of course, included in him telling his life with Baba, his mother Gaimai, Manu, and Erich, and so forth come into it. There's another one called Over the Years with Meherabad, which is again stories, and that has a very nice chapter on the Jessawala family and Bindra House, the establishment of Bindra House. Would you know?
How was it established?
Yes, well, the thing was that the family had Guy Mai first had contact with Baba in 1923. Erich doesn't remember it. He did meet Baba, but he has no recollection. They were told, see, Guy Mai is one of the Sata family who lived at Akbar Press in Naga, and two or three of the brothers were the ones that first had contact with Baba when they were walking across the field. They were just going for a walk in the country, and they'd heard of a Parsi saint being round, but in the walk they saw a figure sitting under a tree, which I believe is still there, neem tree. And the figure beckoned to them, and they came forward, and of course it was Meherabad sitting there, and they were just naturally attracted to him. And in the course of conversation, Baba said, "Who was there in the family?" And whoever it was, Homi was one of them. Roshan Kerawala's father, Homi. Homi said, "We're five brothers and four sisters." And Baba said, "No, you are 6 brothers. I am the 6th." Yeah.
Wow.
And Baba had a lot of contact with them then in Akbar Press. And Guy Mai, who lived with her husband in Nagpur, some distance away, would any opportunities she had, she would come. And that happened in 1928, 29. They came to not to Pune but to Ahmednagar, and they went to Meherabad and were with Baba. And when she was there with her sister Gulmai, her 2 daughters, and her husband, known as Papa Jessawala. And in departing to travel back to Pune, from Pune they go to Nagpur, Baba said, "Make a point of paying your respects to Babajan." And of course Guy Mai and her elder sister Gulamasi said yes. Papa Jessawala, who had great respect for Baba, but didn't accept Baba at that stage as avatar, grumbled a bit. Do we have to? Sort of, why are we going to see that old woman? But the 2 women hushed him up, and they went to Pune, and they came to. Baba said the 2 girls were not to go to Babajan, which was interesting, and they were upset later that they weren't able to see her. But anyway, they came to Babajan, where Babajan was sitting, and at the time in her usual place under a tree, and there's quite a crowd of women. Apparently weren't very many men at the time, but there was a crowd of women, and they were all trying to get close to Babajan, because Babajan had in her hand, she was sitting there, in her hand she had a coconut, and to be given a coconut by a perfect master meant a great blessing. What it was not the question. All they knew was that it was a thing to be sought and to be gained. So they approached Babajan, and this crowd, there's such a crowd round her that Guy Mai said to her sister, let's just pay our respect from a distance from here. Let's try to go through and get to her. And Gulamasi said, no, nothing of the sort. Baba said to Greta, we'll go there. So they forced their way, as it were, through the women. The women were all grumbling, all the Indian women, because they all wanted to make sure they were close to Baba Jan in case they got the coconut. They get to, and they're paying their respect, and all of a sudden Guy Mai has the coconut in her hand. And there's an uproar from the women. And Guy Mai said to Gulamasi, here, I'll give it away. I'll give it to one of them. And Gulamasi said, nothing of the sort. You hang on to it. And so they then departed. That whether you believe it or not, let us say that coconut resulted in Guy Mai becoming pregnant again after 10 years. And when near the time of the birth, it was obvious that the baby was in the wrong position, and the old Parsi woman doctor didn't believe in cesarean, and she put Guy Mai under anaesthetic and manipulated the baby. I know nothing about it, but apparently manoeuvred it so that it was in the right position. And Guy Mai said afterwards that while she was under, she had a most vivid dream in which she experienced intense joy. And she saw coming towards her Meher Baba and Baba Jan. And between them they were carrying a large egg within which was a boy. A boy baby, and they presented to her and then disappeared, and when she came to, apparently a member of the family was teasing her and said, "Oh, you've had a girl," and she said, "No, I know, I've had a boy." Yeah, but must have been she said she felt an intense joy in that dream. That boy is Meherwan.
Oh, that's
Meherwan Jessawala, born 1930. Yeah.
Erich's brother.
Erich's brother. Yeah.
He is so sweet.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's very loving, and most lovely. Erich, I remember Erich saying to me, as far as I'm concerned, you could just leave me and Meherwan together on the veranda of the memorial, of the Guru Prasad Memorial in Pune. Leave us there and forget us. Yeah. Yes, he would have been happy. Yeah. And so then Papa Jessawala says, right, well now let's have a really good, at this time, after the coconut, let's go and have a really nice picnic in Bund Gardens. So he went and purchased all sorts of goodies for the luncheon, and they went there, and lo and behold, to his horror, Papa's horror, Baba Jan was already there, and although she had tea and chapatis. Had got her followers to have these, she kept saying, no, my children haven't come, my children haven't come. When she saw them coming, she said, oh, come, my children have come. Papa was furious. He said, why have we got to put up with this old one? And Gul Masi, who was very outspoken, said, shh, don't say it, you mustn't speak like that. She's actually, spiritual master and so forth. And sure enough, they had to sit down and have the tea and chapatis, and all the goodies went by the board. Papa still complaining. Yeah, anyway.
When did Papa Jessawala
So-
die? When did he die?
58. Wait a minute.
So
58.
You met him. You met him.
I saw him, that's all. I didn't meet him, no. No. No, I saw a lot of them, you know. I remember thinking, gosh, it's amazing the strength of these old men. Of course, to me, they were old men, like Bidle, the same way, standing up all day, serving Baba, you know. Bidle, for example, constantly bringing people, bringing them, they've come before Baba and then they've got to be moved on because, of course, they'll linger, you know. And I remember sort of thinking, God, what strength. Even then I was impressed.
How about telling the story of Papa's death? That was good.
What?
Papa Jessawala's,
Going?
going.
Going. Yes. Anyway, to get to Bindra House.
Sorry, yeah, forget it.
So, okay, so in 1938, and it's the height of summer. It was May of 1938, and Erich is in the garden, doing everything he can to protect the flowers, the gardens of Mary Lodge, which was apparently a very palatial home. A beautiful home in Nagpur. It's one of the 3 major scenic spots of Nagpur, and the British even they would fly over and take photographs and show visitors the grounds. And Erich was in there trying to protect his flowers, and a telegram comes. And the telegram boy announces that he has a cable or telegram. And Guy Mai hears it, comes out of the house, and says to Erich, "What was it?" And Erich said, "Oh, Baba tells me has cabled me to come to see him." She said, "We'll go." And Erich said, "Yeah, all right." And afterwards, later. An hour later, another one comes. And this time, Guy Mai says, "Now, look, go," you know, so in obedience to his mother. An interesting little sideline for those who are mothers. Guy Mai's one method of disciplining her children was to keep silent. Isn't that interesting? They couldn't bear it.
Silent treatment.
Yeah, the silent treatment. She would just not. She wouldn't answer them. She wouldn't speak to them. And apparently, one told me they just couldn't stand it. Yes. Anyway, so Erich went. He then went. There's a whole story. You must have read it, or you must have seen it. Listened to Erich telling it in Mundley Hall. But so they joined Baba on the 1st of August 1938, and in the process they had to sell out everything, as Baba said, and the most difficult part of it was selling the house, which was worth a fabulous amount. There was a family, a Parsi family that they knew, who lived in Nagpur, who loved visiting the Jessawalas, and the wife would say whenever she was there, if you ever want to sell it, we'd love to buy it, And so Erich remembered that, and he approached them and said, "Look, we are selling." And the woman said, "Oh, that's wonderful." So there was talk, and the woman said, I think Eric said, "What are you going? Well, what are you going to pay? What will you offer?" And the woman said, "Look, I'm sorry, but you know, the way that things are at the moment, we're short of money. All we can afford is 40,000 rupees, which it should have been like millions of rupees." But Eric had given his word to Baba to bring the family by the 1st of August. So he said, "Okay, done." And Papa Jessawala, who had created, he was a self-made man and had created this whole thing from nothing. And he said, all I've done, I've lived my life to give you happiness, and if this means greater happiness for you, I accept it. Yeah, and signed it, because he had to sign the document. Okay, 12 years later, it was in about 1950, in the midst of the new life. They were at Bindra House. I'll come to Bindra House and how it got established. But Guy Mai was there in Bindra House, and there was a knock on the door, and she opened it, and there was this woman who had bought Mary Lodge. And Guy Mai said, "Yes, what could I do for you?" She said, Can I talk to you?" And Guy Mai said, "Yes, sure, come in." She had with her quite a big suitcase. And she said, "It's been on my mind all these years. I've got to tell you." She said that when we moved into the house, we were only there for 6 months, because every room we went into, we felt his presence. We never felt as though we were alone. There was always the presence of your Meher Baba. And so real was it that we couldn't stand it any longer, and we moved out. And she said, that actually we did have the money. And she said, "I want to give it to you now." And she opened this suitcase, and there in this large suitcase was absolutely full of rupee notes. And she said, "I want to get it, off my conscience." And Guy Mai said, "Shut it. I don't want anything to do with it. Give it to charity if you wish to." Now, why? It's an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, there was a fabulous amount of money. I mean, it was like crores of rupees. Why? Because the deal is finished. It just reminded me of Baba saying about winning the lottery, and the karma that you gather from all the impressions that one gets with that money. It ain't worth it, and you haven't earned it, so it won't do you any good. Anyway, it was.
You mean the impressions of all the people
that had contributed, and had gone into that lottery. I'm sorry, yeah. No, it was an interesting story. And so, okay, they were with Baba, and Papa was also he finished his service and then retired and on a pension, and he was also with Baba, but he wasn't happy because he felt that his children, particularly Meher one, who was a kid of 8, 9, 10 at the time, should have a proper education. And he was getting some, but Baba was moving, and the family would move with Baba. I mean, it wasn't in accordance with what Papa wanted, and for the girls, and so he's sort of itching to get the family into some place like Pune, which is what what he really wanted. And at the same time, Guy Mai had been placed with Shirin Mai, Barbara's mother. They became very close together, and Shirin Mai, of course, felt extremely sorry for Guy Mai, because Barbara had said to Guy Mai that she would be the Avatar's mother next time. And Shirin Mai said, "You poor soul, if you realised what it's like, you wouldn't be at all happy." She was apparently a very strong-willed woman, very sharp, quick-witted, and quite dominant. She was the...
That was another thing you told the kids at the youth
I
hall,
know.
was about
I
the
said-
trouble that Baba had with his mother.
Yeah, I said, you know, if some of you have trouble with your mother, just think of Barbara. He had trouble with hers, and at one time Barbara was. I know I'm digressing. At one time Barbara was telling the Western women that they had to accept whatever happens, but at whatever cost they had to retain their poise and their self-control. And he said, you know, and my mother is a good test for that. He said, you know, there are times when I feel like murdering her. He actually said that, but I lovingly embrace her.
Bill, do you remember anything that Baba ever said? I very vaguely remember, but maybe I'm something about the folly of the relationship with the mother. Something about the folly with an avatar. I know, like in Krishna, for example, there's so many great stories in the Bhagavad Gita about Krishna and his mother, because Krishna was always having mischief. But
no, the only thing I can tell you is that there's always a balance. There's always the spiritual and the practical, and sometimes it's the woman who's spiritual, and sometimes the practical. See, in Baba's case, the father knew who Baba was. All he did in his life was yes done. You could see his lips moving apparently constantly. Yes done, yes done. The name of God in the Zoroastrian tradition. And in the case of Jesus, Mary was the spiritual one, and Joseph was the practical. There's always that balance, and for a good marriage, you have that too. You've always, with love has to flow, and then to flow, you have to have an imbalance, a difference. Do you follow me? Yeah, so anyway, so Papa wants to get the family away, and in a normal situation where his children will have good education and so forth. Guy Mai wants to stay with Baba. So Baba had, in his inimitable way, has a way of fixing it. So he says privately to Papa, it would be good if you settled down in Pune, which is just what Papa wanted. And to Guy Mai, he says, you know, Shirin Mai is not well now. I want you to go and be with her in Pune, and be with her. And of course, Guy Mai's suspicious. You know, oh no, it's all right. I mean, you know, you'll be there for a few weeks, perhaps with her, but then, you know, you'll be with me again, he says. And Guy Mai very doubtfully sort of agreed, but at the same time quite suspicious. Anyway, so that's what happened. And Bindra House was a two-story house built by an army doctor as a hospital. It was meant to be a hospital, but it wasn't that way. And in the end, he lived on the top, and they lived on the bottom part of it, and another family it was another family in another little section at the end. and it was a very simple, a living room partitioned off, so there was the kitchen and a dining room. The front door opened up. You came in, and there immediately was the dining room table or kitchen table, whatever it was, of all things. To this side was one room, a bedroom, bathroom, and a bedroom. The living room was converted into a bedroom for the women. They had their beds there, and Meherabad, Papa Jessawala Papa had one room, and the front room was Erich, and when he was there, and Meherabad, and that Bindra house went on, and Baba said, he kept saying that he would call that, but he kept coming to see. He kept coming to Bindra house and would stay, as he said he would, but he didn't. He never came. They never then again with Baba for any great length of time. Perhaps at a month at a time, he would call Gai Mai.
So you would visit Bindra House when you went to Pune?
Often. And the first time I was there, of course, I knew that Baba had been in. He never, after it was established, after it came into being in 1943, Baba never ate or slept or bathed or anything in his family home. It was always Bindra House.
Is that the pumpkin house?
No.
Oh,
The pumpkin house was the family home early, and then they moved across the lane to their present place.
And that's called Baba's house?
And that's called Baba's house, Baba House, yeah.
And then
Bindra House doesn't exist now. It was pulled down. It was finally sold. And that's another story, yeah. And
So you used to visit?
yes, I used to go there, and the first time, of course, I said, well, what chairs can I sit on? Or they said, look, anything. He sat on Barbara's been on all the beds and all the chairs, everywhere. Yeah. And what I remember, they were a most loving family, just incredible. Gai Mai was, I can well understand how people like Jal Kerawala, some of those old Baba lovers, what they loved was visiting there, because immediately Gai Mai would say, what stories have you got? What story have you been with Baba? Have you seen Baba? What? And they would immediately. That's all she wanted to talk about was Baba. And what I remember so well was Gai Mai cooking, preparing breakfast or whatever meal, and all the time her lips would be moving. Baba.
Meherabad does that
You
now.
couldn't hear it, but you could see the lips moving.
Meherabad does that now.
Yes, he does. I know. I noticed that. Yeah. All the time. You had a wonderful family.
Well, do you remember when you first met Erich?
Yeah, I do. The first time I really, funny you should say that, because the first time that I really, Erich registered, I mean, I was aware in that first interview, I think I told you, I'm sure you must have heard me, so, how in that interview where Baba said, you brought me 2 jewels, and you felt immediately, oh, thank God, you felt accepted, embraced, and sort of still, Baba had an effect of talking about his silence. It had the effect when you were with him of the mind being so easily focused on him. And at the same time, of course, his face and his gestures, the eyes flashing and moving constantly, was such that you couldn't help but be focused and be absorbed in that. But, in the interview, as I've said, Barbara suddenly looked at John Valentine, who was new to Barbara, who had very little exposure to Barbara at that point. And Barbara suddenly said to him, "Who do you take me to be?" And John sort of hesitated and stopped and then said, "A perfect master." And Barbara looked at him and sort of, "How would you know?" I can still see that expression, sort of, this is interesting. How would you know? And of course, I think, hey, damn good point. How would you know? I mean, I'm absorbed in this, and while I'm digesting that, all of a sudden, Barbara looks at me, and says, "Who do you take me to be?" And as I've said. And I have no idea where it came from. I don't know why I would have said it, but it came out of me. "You are my ideal. You are what I would like to be myself." And Barbara beamed and then turned like this. I can see it now, the way he turned and looked up at Erich. And for the first time I realised it was Erich's voice. Barbara was so expressive. I honestly tell you, I had no idea that it was Erich's voice until he turned like that and gestured. And I don't know what the gesture was, like, "That's a new one," or or "Did you hear that?" I don't know, but the interesting thing was that it broke that spell, and then of course then the interview went on. But the one time when I realised that hey, there's something special about Erich. In 1956, he was in our house Barbara was in our house in Sydney, and I was standing against the wall of the house, and the cooking. And the women were living and cooking in the big double garage that was below the Mayer house. There's the house, and this was a bit lower. There was a bit of a rock path down with a few steps, and Erich obviously was down there, came charging up the path to go to Barbara. He was obviously hell-bent on getting to Barbara. I stopped him to tell him something, and Erich stopped, and he was totally focused on me. That's what struck me. There was no sort of, "Well, what is it?" or any flicker of the eye. He was completely and utterly with me for those. I mean, it may have been half a minute when I told him whatever I had to say, and he was off. I'll never forget that. I thought, my God, that was something. That incredible, poise, however you like to put it, it was impressive. And but otherwise, I didn't really get to know Erich until '67.
Really?
When not really. I mean, Erich was there all the time, but there was never any personal interchange. No, he was interpreting the J. Barber. He was interpreting the Barber's gestures and words, and that was just Erich. But then in '67. When I lived there for those 2 weeks, then each evening we'd go for a walk, and Erich would tell me stories, and he advised me. It was that that was the beginning of what you might say was a very lovely relationship that I had over the years with her, especially when after Baba dropped the body and I was able to, you know, visit Meherabad, and be with them so much, like all the various ones here.
Why were you there for 2 weeks in '67?
Baba just called me. Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, it was obvious. I mean, he had instructions for me, but he had told me with each time I was with him, from 1954, 56, 58, 62. Each time with great emphasis, he told me to spread his name and message, tell people about his love and truth and so forth. And of course I endeavoured but got nowhere. And in '65, when there was going to be a Sahavas, Baba sent a message saying that he would give me 7 extra days on top of the period that the Sahavas. Then it was cancelled. And so okay. We just cancelled. That was that, and I just went on with my work. And then out of the blue, 18 months later, there's another message. Baba says, "Well, seeing I didn't give you 7 days then, I'll give you 14 now." And so that was the 14 days, and the emphasis of the 14 days was get serious about spreading his message, and get serious about developing Avatar's Abode as a place of pilgrimage. Yeah.
So you went home with a mission.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I was. That's the funny thing is, people say, "Well, what was it like to say goodbye or to leave Baba?" I tell you, the only sense I had was I can remember Baba was seated in his chair, and Mayo and I went out of Mundley Hall at the same time. And I remember saying, "Jai Baba," you know, going and greeting Baba, and thinking, I had the sensation quite clearly that I would do what Baba wanted. I'd get on with the job that he's given me. It's sort of like going round the corner, and then I'd be back again with him. That's all. I had no sense of a goodbye. None of it all. I thought, yeah, fine. It'll be wonderful. I've got a renewed commission, as it were, you know. Mm-hmm. Now I'll really get stuck into it, and then I'll be back with him. Well, I'll have to wait 700 years. That's
well, the next time you went back was for Darshan, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Bill, did you have a chance to observe Baba with Mara much, interacting with Mara?
No, not at all. No, I never saw Mara in '67. I never saw Mara or Meru. I saw the others. I can remember Money, my first view of Money. She remembers me seeing me in '54. I don't remember at all. But my first view of her was she came. I'm on the veranda of the little cottage, you know, that's opposite Mundley Hall. I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm aware of this figure that's come from the corner of Erich's cabin, come round the corner with a hat on, papers under her arm, as though it was a swagger stick, you know, and doing a soft shoe shuffle. It was so delightful. That was Money, you know, then. Isn't it funny? I can still see that figure waltzing there and then coming over and greeting me and embracing me warmly, and Rano, Gava, and Naja. Naja would roll up her paper and look at me. She had very bad eyesight. She'd look at me and see whether I was good, to whether she'd give me food that night or not. Have you been good? Have you done your work? She was quite delightful. All right. Yeah.
What happened to John Ballantyne?
Don't know. Don't know. Erich, he came in 56 when Baba came, but only half there, and all of a sudden he disappeared, and no one's seen him ever since. Erich, he was very withdrawn. He was not an outgoing. He was a very withdrawn person. In other words, there could have been mental trouble. It's either that, or his family, who were very Scottish. Valentine, can't imagine more Scottish name, and very hostile to Baba, of course, and they may have gone back to Scotland to make sure he didn't get involved. Don't know. We've never seen him again.
He was young?
He was young. He was a few years. I was 30 and he was 24, 25. But very young and very very hesitant, very withdrawn. Yeah, I mean, he could have easily become schizophrenic. Yeah. Yeah. There was a funny time in my life there. I would I don't know when it was, but it was sort of like it could have been 2 or 3 years after that. And I'd be going through the streets of Sydney. I'd be walking, and all of a sudden, oh, that's John. And I'd rush up, and it wasn't. And it lasted for a few months. Then it went. But I was so sure it was. Oh, isn't it funny? Yeah, not that we were close, but yet we had been together with
Well, how
Baba.
did he get connected in the first place?
He was a friend of other artists, musicians. Francis drew, not only he drew a few young ones because of music. And sort of Bohemian, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the only two that that actually stuck with it were Robert and Lorna Rouse, and they saw Baba in 56 and 58, and then went in 62. Lorna's died. Robert is still alive. I think he's 8 years younger than I am. Yeah. It's funny. I don't feel at all. I know I can't understand my age myself. I don't feel at all old.
You don't look
That's
old.
great.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, I keep thinking, well, perhaps I should start another career. That's what I said in the play. Remember, it was at my improvisation. Oh, Baba, I've got a new career. Baba looks surprised. You know, he acted the part, and I said, yeah, I'm going to go on the stage. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but
What was the 3 incredible weeks like? Was that a joyous time with all you guys?
it was wonderful. I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. But at the same time, I didn't feel, I was very serious about it, you know. To me, it was sort of like an advanced university course. To me, what was essential was having a thorough grounding in the discourses and spiritual tradition, and you know, I had reread the New Testament, and I read the life of Buddha and Muhammad. You know, I mean, this had to be thoroughly studied. Yeah, and that's when Baba said, "I'll fix you." Yeah, and that's when he told me to sit in the samadhi, the tomb shrine, at midnight for half an hour.
And what was that like?
It was petrifying, and not petrifying. How would I couldn't say that. What it did, what it was that that if I can say now that when I was placed in there, and it was pitch black, it was at midnight, and there's no sound, nothing. In those days, in '54, there was no cars, there was no train, there was nothing. There was no animals, no movement of people. There was nothing but blackness. And all of a sudden, I was anchorless, you could say, because my heart was not active. In other words, I hadn't developed that love for Baba that enables one, that makes one a hero. Like the Mandali, they would go through hell, and many hells for Baba without turning a hair. I was there for half an hour, and I thought, this is enough. And I realized, I mean, in other words, the experience was such that I was angerless and I was not able to. Baba had said, keep your eyes open, don't move, and inwardly take my name. Well, I couldn't do it. All I could think of, all I was aware of was God. It's as though I was alone in the universe. I had nothing. And in retrospect, I know now that, of course, and love for Baba then grew over the years. I mean, okay, I mean, it's like, I mean, you might have all come very quickly to Baba. I had to work at it in the sense that more and more I didn't mind what happened, because I could turn more readily to him. But it's like, as far as I'm concerned, it's a slow process. Well, it is for me. I mean, it's a case of, well, okay, I can see why they say, well, it takes many lifetimes. Yeah. So don't be in a hurry. Don't take it too seriously. Seriously, if you know what I mean. You take it seriously, but don't go overboard because, oh my God, I haven't got there yet.
What was the
So did Baba allude to that half hour?
Yes, the key words were, fear means no love. Love means no fear. And fear for me was the fear of loss.
Of loss.
Yeah, because of course the spiritual path is a path of loss. To me, at that time, it was, well, I just study it and, I sort it all out, and then I'll know what it's all about, and we'll do it. It's not.
The loss of identity.
Yeah, the loss of well, everything, except Baba. Yeah. Yeah.
That was it. One time you sat in the samadhi.
No, twice. The second time, the first time, and then that was when Baba said, fear means no love. Love means no fear. And then the next night, I was getting the hang of it. Yeah, and I said to Baba, I said, it's easier this time, Baba, something like that. And Baba then cancelled it. The Darwin thought that he snorted. He thought that it was terrible that because Baba had said, at the end of 7 nights you may get a glimpse of God, which didn't mean anything to me. As far as I was concerned, I was just doing what Baba asked me to do. Glimpse of God? I don't know. I don't know about such things. that sounds a bit rich for me. But Baba cancelled it. Yeah. So whether it's because I failed or whether it's because I got the message anyway, I don't know.
So what was Darwin's reaction?
Darwin's reaction was he thought it was terrible that I hadn't completed the 7 nights. In other words, he took it that I'd failed, And if I'd only been more serious, like he would have been, I would have got that glimpse of God. Funny life.
So was there anyone else who was told?
John was the other young one, but he felt nothing. He just said no. He said no. I didn't feel anything. Didn't mean a thing to it. No, the message was definitely for me.
Did you have anything to do with Fred Winterfeld?
Yeah, I liked him. Yeah, I liked him. He was a bit different from the others. I mean, he was more down to earth. Sorry. I mean, with all due respect. Yeah. No, he was very. I liked him.
Was that the first time you'd met Americans?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I know I was not a travel. I would never have travelled if it hadn't been for Barbara. No. No
I think
urge.
that's true of most people.
Yeah. And then and look, God, I've been to India about 75 times. God. When I was thinking the other day of the money that, if I had all that money, I'd be a wealthy man. Yeah.
Have you had a glimpse of the future for Avatar's Abode? Do you imagine that it's just what it is? Or it's going to be some sort of...
Oh, yes, it will be. It will. I mean, it's obvious to me, there's no question that for Barbara to travel twice to Australia, particularly after his second car accident, I can remember, the obvious suffering that Barbara was having after the second car accident, and to do that travel from America. What for? For a handful of people. It's quite clear that Australia has a role in his cause for the next 700 years. Yeah. What it is, I mean, all I know is that's why the reason why he called me over in '67 was for Avatar's Abode and Mayor House. That's our house, the family, my home in Australia, in Sydney, where he lived, stayed.
In that house, I want to make sure I remember the story you told. When you asked him what you should do, he said, "Do anything you want because you can't destroy my presence." Is that what he said?
Correct.
He can't destroy
Yeah,
my presence.
I left the house, after 56. Or was it after 58? I might have been after 58. And I left the house, 56 and 58, I left the house as it was because it's sort of just as it was when Barbara was there. I didn't want to, I hesitated to change anything because it wasn't quite finished. There was definitely finishing touches to be done. Structurally it was finished, but not in terms of beautifying it, you could say, or completing it in certain respects. And I thought, oh no, I should do something because with people coming to see it, it should be worthy of Barbara in every respect. And so I tentatively wrote to India and said how I was hesitating to do anything. And Barbara sent the message back saying, "Do whatever you like, nothing will ever destroy my presence there." Yeah, and then said, "What do you intend doing?" and you can spend 1,000. I've forgotten whether it was 1,000. Whatever it was anyway. I was able to get it done with whether it was pounds or dollars, I can't remember, but whatever it was, I was able to get it done. It was a rough rock wall. It was rock, but it hadn't been finished. And so I was able to get paneling, wood paneling, alternate apparently lovely Tasmanian oak. It's very nice. When you see it, you'll agree with me, it's very nice. No, it's nice. Nice to just talk about these things.
Well, I'm thinking that Australia is in the middle of Asia, you know, and it's like a Western country.
Yeah.
That you know, people will be flocking to from that part of the world.
Well, there's no question that the world has moved from. That was so after, with the Second World War. It was quite obvious that Europe was finished, and the centre of the world for this coming age is the Pacific. And so you've got America, and you know, on the one hand, with America, as I've read, Barbara has said, be sure of one thing: America will lead the world spiritually. And then you've got China, India, Australia, and all that.
It's so easy to believe about America, isn't it?
To me, I mean, for what it's worth, you know, this is not a major thing, but I've been in Europe, I've been to England and France, and I've talked, and to me, it does lack energy. It's like, if you like, it's like a person aged, and they've had their time, and America is like a man in the prime of life, or a person in the prime of life that knows where they're going, and they're going. Australia is like a young person who's still sorting themselves out.
Isn't that sweet?
Now, when Baba said,
To me, that's why I love coming here, because, frankly, I do enjoy the energy that I feel in America. I do enjoy it, and also I enjoy talking about Baba, and you seem to be prepared to listen to me. It's a good combination. Yeah.
well, when Baba mentioned how the United States will lead the world spiritually, he never said whether it's after the big to-do, the big, or you know, sort of more in the more, you know, like
future,
in the next few decades, or maybe after the big whatever is going to be.
I don't know. All I know is that the activity that I know of, that I feel is good in activity in connection with Baba's cause, comes principally from America. To me, there's no two ways about it. There might be a handful of people in America. I mean, 'cause, hey, let's be frank. There's not that many Baba lovers, but boy, a fair bit's done. And there is there's an impact made. No two ways about it. Not from Europe, but from here. Not from Australia. I get so impressed with certain individuals that I meet, and I hear what the activity they're doing in Baba's name, and or in the cause of connected with Baba, if you know what I mean, educationally and culturally. And
It's so impressive to sort of connect with people like Ward Parks.
yeah,
He's just on fire.
yeah.
And, you know, you can't help but catch it.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's true. Absolutely.
And Sheila and Sherry are. This
Sheila who?
library.
Yeah.
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 This bookstore.
The foundation, what's been done by the foundation. That's that again. I mean, you know, it's only a handful of people, but boy, you're doing things.
And the center itself is so amazing. I mean, such a balance of men and women, you know.
We
sort
were
of like
commenting
the love
that
just
driving.
flows. Like whatever's needed, the people, just Quite impressive.
Yeah. The number of volunteers that I keep finding new ones that pop up, you know, doing this little duty and that. It's wonderful. Yeah.
It's such a blessing to be part of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we reckon. Yeah. You know, we thoroughly enjoy our time here, I can tell you. And of course the youth too. It's when you mix with 150 young ones from 15 to 30 sort of thing, and you feel their energy and their interest in Baba. I mean, they listen to my stories.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Well, it's funny. Tex Hightower was once invited to speak to the
That's right.
Babas, and he was so moved. And he's not an easy person to move.
No.
You know? And he was so honestly, he was so moved by the genuine interest and love that the young people had. It completely pierced his whatever.
Yes, I know. Yes, he's a very self-contained sort of a person.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, thank you so much.
Thank you.